Hello, tiny friends. I hope you all are having a lovely day. I'm super excited to share this video with you all. The sewing room is finally completed 100%. I don't think I can put anything else in the room. This was one of those projects that just spiraled out of control. Like the ideas just kept spawning new ideas, and they just kept coming and they just would not stop. And so I finally just had to put a cap on it and be like, you know what? No more ideas. That is enough. It's kind of bittersweet because I enjoyed making every single piece for this room, from the floors to the walls to the ceilings and the lights. Like every single bit of it I absolutely loved. And I hope, well, I'm sure Margot will love it too, now that she has a nice sewing room to spend time in and do her work. I I really I really can't say there was any grunt work at all to any part of creating this room. If I have to say that there was any grunt work at all, I would definitely say it would be the editing. There is so much time that goes into editing, and for this last episode, there was so much footage. Oh my gosh. How do you turn hours of footage into less than an hour? Definitely lots of cutting and 2 times speed. So I hope that I have put together a sensible video for you all. I feel like I hear Kiwi chirping, but I don't feel like that's her. I don't know, that's really weird. I'm sorry if it's super loud. She's pitter-pattering on the floor. I won't be able to show how I made every single item because there was so much, but I will show how I made a few of those. And then in the end, that is so weird. Like, Kiwi, is that you peeping? I mean, are you peeping? Where is that coming from? I'm going to show how I made a few of the miniatures, and then in the end, when I show everything that I did make, I'll talk about that was Kiwi for sure. Because now she's in my ear. It's weird. She was on the floor. It didn't sound accurate. I will show you all the miniatures that I made, and I will talk a little bit about how I made them. So yeah, did that make sense? Okay. So, and it's also a special video today because today is my 1-year anniversary for TinyKeyHoleMinis. Yeah, last September on the 13th, I uploaded my very first video for TinyKeyHoleMinis, and now there is like almost 2,000 of you, and that is so exciting. I am so grateful, and I appreciate and love each and every one of you. You guys are so kind. I love all your comments. This is just a beautiful community. Absolutely a beautiful place to be, and I just love being here. I absolutely love it. And I don't know if that's good with numbers and all in a year, but it's good to me, and I love it. I'm so thankful and grateful, and I'm so blessed to be able to do this. I want to thank you all. I want to thank you all for subscribing. I love you all. And to all of you other miniature artists out there, you guys are so talented. I just have to give you a big thanks for inspiring me, for encouraging me, and for teaching me what you all are doing so that I can incorporate into my miniatures as well. And I hope that I can be able to keep creating more miniatures and keep learning to create better miniatures that you all will enjoy and hope love and continue to watch and learn as well. And I love teaching everything that I'm making and learning, and hoping that you all are being inspired and learning how to create some of these miniatures for your own as well, because we know miniatures can be expensive, right? I mean, this is not a cheap hobby or craft or collecting. This is not a cheap one, is it? No, it is not. And that is one of the main reasons why I got into making my own, because I really just couldn't afford going out and buying some of those miniatures that I really wanted. And I just tried my hand at it, and lo and behold, a year later, here I am, and I have learned so much. And um one of the miniatures that I did show how I made, which um was a plant, um I actually show you the very first one and do a comparison so you can see the progress that I've made. I have learned so much in just this year alone. Um, I'm so thankful. Thank you all so much. So to go on to the video, because there is so much, we better get started. So I hope you all enjoy this, and thank you so much once again. Okay, tiny friends, this first project is going to be a fun DIY that you can do for yourself. I'm going to make a little plant. This was one of the first miniatures that I learned how to make off of Pinterest years ago. I've got some matte Mod Podge and coffee grounds for the dirt. You can also use tea. I've got some fabric. I chose about 4 different types of fabrics. I've got some green floral wire from the Dollar Tree, and I'm going to use green painter's tape. I had green on hand, and I thought it would make a great base color, but you can use any type of masking tape, and you can also use bread ties. I've got 3 different sizes that I've cut down, and I have this little wooden flower pot. I'm going to try and recreate a flower pot that I have in real human size, and it's been decoupaged with different fabric squares, kind of looks like a patchwork of some sorts. So I'm going to use the matte Mod Podge to attach these little squares on in different directions and try and make it look like that pot that I have, instead of painting it. But I will paint the rim blue. So you can do this as well, or you can just paint your pot. So this piece here, all I've done is just sandwich the wire in between 2 pieces of tape. And then I'm just going to cut out the shape that I want. So I'm going to take my scissors and just kind of cut it down a little bit. This is one of the larger pieces. I actually have one of each size to show you. I'm not sure what kind of plant I'm going for. I'm just going for a plant, and I'm not cutting any specific shape. I'm just trying to stay with a basic shape for this plant. You can go ahead and cut specific plant shapes, specific types of plants. But once I get this cut out, I'm actually going to just pinch the bottom down a little and then pinch the top part. And I'm just going to pinch around the sides a little to give it a little bit more shape and make it a little more realistic. I'm going to do the same thing for this one. You can see the wire makes a great little spine in the leaves, and I left them long on the bottom so that they can actually be stuck down into the pot, and I'll have to trim them down a little bit later. Now this one, the tape is actually folded over. So I cut out a piece, I laid down the wire, and then I just folded the other part on top of itself. So you could do it either way. And now I'm just cutting down the shape that I want. I'm going to pinch the bottoms again and the tops, and this just helps shape the leaf to make it look a little more realistic. And I found this one in my stash. I think this is a dried leaf. So I want to use it and add it in as like a dead leaf. So I'm just trying to cut the other leaves the same type of shape. Okay, so this is what the pot looks like. And the Mod Podge is still drying. It's not quite dried yet. I also painted the top of the pot, the little rim, but I didn't paint the inside because you won't really see that. So now I'm just going to mix together the coffee grounds and the Mod Podge to create some dirt. Kind of want to mix a consistency you're happy with. Right now it's too thin, so I'm going to add a little more. I don't want it to be too thin. And then I'm going to add a little bit of tacky glue in the bottom of the pot so that the wire will be completely secured inside. Okay, so I'm not using all of this dirt, but I did learn something while creating this pot. Later on, after I add the leaves, I'm actually going to use a little more dirt to fill in some of the spaces around the leaves. I went in and used this same dirt. Now, it's super hard and dried by that time, and all I did was add a little bit of Mod Podge to it and broke it down, and it came right back to life. So if you have extra dirt left over and you want to reuse it, just add a little more Mod Podge to it and break it down. It softens right up and you can reuse it. So now I'm going to add this dead leaf first, and it's a little large, so I'm going to cut that down. I'm starting with the outer leaves, the larger leaves. There's no specific way to do this. You can start with the smaller leaves on the inside and work your way around the outside. I just started on the outside with the larger leaves. So this is what that looks like, and I'm going to set this aside to dry and come back to it. Okay, so this is the fan that I purchased off of Temu. It's a die-cast fan, and I need to make this look a little more realistic. So I have this bolt. I'm going to use my jewelry metal glue by Aleene's, and I'm just going to add this bolt right onto the very back of it, just to give it a little more of a shape. So it looks like that. Okay, and I'm thinking that these pieces may come apart because there's a gap between the front piece and the back piece. And I tried to get them apart before when I first got it, and I couldn't do it. And I would really like to make my painting go a little bit easier, but I don't know if they do. I'm thinking they do because of that space. So, okay, they do. All right, I got it. I must have loosened it up before trying. So they have little prongs, and those actually fit inside the holes, and it also looks like there's some glue on it. So if you have one of these, they do come apart. They do eventually. So now I'm going to paint them with my silver chrome paint marker, and this is like an enamel type of paint. It smells like nail polish. It's going to stick really well to the metal. I'm going to paint the blades. I'm going to paint the stand. I'm going to paint the back of the bolt and the little circle that sits in front of the front piece. Okay, so while those pieces are drying, I thought this would be a perfect time to paint the plant. I am using a basic green, a lime green, a yellow, and a little bit of white. And I'm starting with the basic green because right now it's the darkest color I'm using. But as I'm applying these colors, I'm not even gonna wipe my brush off, and I'm gonna apply the colors together as they're still wet because this will help them blend in a little better together and just look more natural. So right now I'm not doing anything specific as far as adding the paint to which areas. I'm just going in and painting what looks good to me and trying to make it look a little more realistic. I'm not going to completely cover the whole leaf with paint because I want some of that green painter's tape to be part of the coloring. Okay, and at this point you can stop as is, But for this old house, I have to keep going with the age. So in order to make this plant look a little older, I'm just snipping out some of the pieces of the leaves. Sometimes on a plant leaf, you'll see a little tear or a piece missing out of it. So that's what I'm going to do, just to a few of them. And I'm going to add a little bit of my favorite shade. Now this is funny. This is called Cinnamon by Folk Art. And for a while, I was calling it Cinnamon Caneel. And then a viewer told me that the word caneel is the French word for cinnamon. So I guess it's just cinnamon. So this is what it's looking like. I'm going to add a little more. I'm going to take this really dark green called Campground Green, and that is what it's called in English. Forget the foreign words on this one. And I'm just running it right along the edges of the leaves, just to give it a little more dimension. Okay, and I wanted to show you the difference between my very first plant that I made in 2014 versus the new plant. So this is a really big difference with the painting. As you can see, it just looks so elementary as far as the striping and the coloring. It doesn't look very realistic, but I've learned so much, and I am going to leave it as is just to show the progress between the two plants. This plant was actually made with bread ties. So this is what they look like if you use bread ties. So you can use twisty ties as well if you get them out of the packaging for the garbage bags, or the sandwich baggies sometimes come with bread ties. And that's what I used to create this first plant. And I just drew lines on that weren't very good. But big difference. I thought it would be super fun to show you the difference between the two. And the first plant actually looks like it's a little dehydrated. Like maybe it needs some water. Okay, now I'm going back to age the fan. I'm using alcohol with black and brown acrylic paint. And at first I'm starting off with a thinner solution, but I do go a little bit thicker later on. It just helps to gunk things up. So I'm going to do this in layers. I'm going to wait for them to dry, and then I'm going to go back in and add more and just keep adding until I get the results that I'm looking for. I like using the alcohol with the metals because it dries super fast and it sticks really well, better than the water wash. So now I'm going back with a darker and thicker solution and just aging it up a little more around the edges. And I'm just trying to create some of that gunk that might build up on the old fan blades, the metal ones, and especially in the jointed areas. So now I'm going to put it together, and I'm gluing the blades back into place so they're not going to turn anymore. Originally, you were able to turn them, but that won't be needed. This fan is going to be sitting put and not being moved. I'm also adding a little bit more of the metal glue right around the rim and in the little holes so that when I add the plate back on, it will actually stay put. So I'm just making sure that I line those holes up in the correct manner, and that completes the age of my fan. So now that it's a lot older and a little more dirty, I have a few more parts to add to it that came to mind to help it look a little more realistic. I found this cord left over from a Bentley House Minis kit. I think this was actually extra because I used all of the ones that I had for the kits. But this is going to come into play for a plug. Okay, so now I'm going to go fishing through all my little tidbits and parts and leftover pieces from previous projects to try and find the pieces that I need to create the ideas that I want to add to the fan. And oh my gosh, tiny friends, look what I found. This was a little flip switch that I created from a toothpick, the very tip of a toothpick, when I created the Bentley House Mini projector kits. So I can't believe I found this. I'm so happy. I am definitely going to add this to the fan. Now I don't have to make one. So now I'm going through another container, and I have several of these containers that I just dump all these extra pieces in. Tiny friends, this is what I call my treasure trash. These are some templates left over from the projector kits, so I keep those as well. And this is what I do not throw away. I love going through this stuff. It really helps spark ideas when you're going through all these little tidbits and pieces. It's very helpful and it's super fun. So I'm going through another container here, and this process definitely takes a while, but it's super necessary. So while I'm going through all of this, I'm also pulling out some pieces for the two little wooden boxes that I purchased off of Temu. One is the sewing box and one is the jewelry box. So I've just figured while I have all this stuff out, I might as well collect some of those pieces that I'm going to need for those two boxes as well. So here is another box that I'm going through, and I'm not going to be showing these two boxes. I'll show the sewing box in the end, and then I'll show the jewelry box when I get to the bedroom. So yet again, here is another container, and I have so much of this stuff, but I love it. A lot of this stuff is reject pieces that didn't make the cut for a previous project, but may, be needed to do a different project. So start building your stashes if you don't have any. Don't throw away any of the parts and pieces that you don't like for a specific project, because you may want it and need it and would like to use it for another project down the road. I also have some nail decals and some puffy stickers. The puffy stickers, I like to cut little bits and pieces off and use those as parts as well. So these ones came from the Dollar Tree, and you can just cut them all apart. Okay, all the pieces are pulled out. I have better ideas on what I want to do. That really helped spark some ideas going through all that stuff and playing around. And I added some pieces inside so that I can use them later on. But I'm going to take this little piece here, and I'm going to try to use these cuticle cutters to cut this thin metal. I need to cut the ring off of it, and I'm just trying to see if these work. But note to self, cuticle cutters do not work on thin metals. So I'm snipping off this ring, and I'm actually going to need 3 of those for the fan. Okay, I've pulled out some paper hinges for the sewing box, and those came off of a template from a Bentley House mini kit. I've aged the metals with a wash, and I'm just preparing the pieces that need to be painted and colored. I'm working on the hinges, and I'm just gluing these little pieces together. These actually go with the hinges, and this came from the Hall Tree kit from Bentley House Minis. So I'm going to use those on the sewing box, which originally had some sort of sticky tape or fabric. I'm going to go ahead and add some texture and metallic paint to the paper hinges to make them look like metal. And this is what they look like after adding a little bit of stamping, very dry stamping. I added a little bit of wash to the cord. I didn't want it to look like a solid black. I just wanted it to look old and dirty. And now I'm going to add some paper bolts to the fan. And the glue isn't even there. Okay, I'm going to try again. And this time I'm going to add it to the glue. I thought this was so funny. Okay, so I do like them silver, but I end up going in and adding a little bit of gold to those bolts. But I do wish, now that I see it up close, I wish I left them silver. So I added one on each side right in the seam of the mold, and now I'm adding a little bit of that metal jewelry glue to an earring back. This is a metal earring back, and I'm just putting it right over the hole and adding the cord. Okay, I didn't add prongs because this is definitely going to be plugged in. And now I'm adding the flip switch on this little ring part that I glued right onto the front, and it also has this protruding side, so I thought that was perfect to hold the switch in place. So that's what that looks like. I can't believe I found that. That is so tiny. I just rounded off the edge on that. I'm adding a ring in the very back, and this is where I'm going to glue the plug in. So I'm adding a little super glue right in the middle, and I'm going to add the cord. And now I'm going to add a ring right to the side, right here on the back. And this is where I'm going to add a pull chain. So right now I'm just gluing that pull chain right in the hole. And that's what that looks like. And now she can turn it on high or low. Well, I'm not really sure which switch does which. I'm not sure which one turns it on and which one turns it high or low. I don't even know how these old fans work, but I thought that would be great to add both. So now she has the option to turn it on and off and high and low. Okay, now I need to make a table for that fan to sit on. So I'm digging through all my scrap wood. I want this table to look really handmade. I want it to look old and rustic because this is a table that her husband made years ago. So I'm just fishing through to try and get some ideas and find some pieces that are going to be useful. I'm also going to create a old rustic shelf that the old man has made as well. And again, I want both pieces to look really handmade. So this is super fun to create when you're using your old cuts and just wood scraps because it's really going to help to give it that handmade look. So I found some of these scrap cuts that I had left over from creating the floor in the sewing room. And they look like skinny sticks, but they're really just cut pieces. And I really love these because they have like jagged edges and they don't all line up completely evenly. So it gives them little gaps and just helps to make them look like they're really old and helps to make this shelf look handmade. So I've glued them together with wood glue and I'm just taping them down until they dry. I got them nice and tight and pressed together, and the tape will help secure that. Now I'm going to create the table. I'm going to use this square piece as a template so that I can see how many of these pieces I need. I'm going to use 4. I'm going to glue them together and then I'm going to cut them down and I'll have 2 halves. So this is all I'm doing, and I'm trying to stagger the pieces a little bit because I don't want them to be completely straight, but I'm using the same technique I did for the shelf. Okay, so now I'm going to cut them down. The shelf is about 3 inches by a half of an inch, and that's how wide the brackets were. I'm adding little supports underneath the shelf, and I'm just going to clamp them down just until they're done drying. And I'm going to cut the table and lay it on the template, and then I'm going to measure out the other half. And now I got 2 halves. I'm going to glue them together. I'm doing the same thing I did in the beginning. So I'm going to glue them nice and tight, tape them down. And now I need to create a skirt that will go around the table and help support the legs. So I'm just cutting a piece of scrap wood with scissors because I want it to look jagged. I want the pieces to look like they were hand cut and not very even. Okay, to make the wood look even older, I'm going to take my craft knife and just carve out some little wedged areas on the edges and make some little slices going up the board a little bit. This is the same technique I used on the sewing wood or on the sewing room floor to make that old creaky floor. I've carved out some of the sides, and now I'm going in with my Dollar Tree poker tool to make some wormholes. And this just really makes the wood look very authentic and like it's salvaged barn wood. I'm filing it and sanding it really good so no one gets any splinters. And now I'm going to add legs to the table. I'm using those super cool spindles that I just got and just cutting off the very tips. And then I used wood glue. So for aging, to age the boards, I'm giving it a weathered look. So I'm using this black dirty water and some gray acrylic paint. I'm putting the paint on the board and then I'm dipping my brush in the water and just smearing it and spreading it around. And I'm doing the same exact thing with the table, only I'm using antique wax. Sorry, I'm going faster than I can talk, and my computer is very slow, so it's giving me issues while I'm recording audio. Um, Going in another step after this dried, I am going in with a little bit of that antique wax just to bring out some more of that detail. Now I'm going to create some accessories for that shelf, and I have this leather strap. It came in a thrift haul. I cut it down to size and I'm making a little belt. So I'm using the sewing pin to make the holes. I'm using the Dollar Tree tool to stretch the holes, and now I'm adding a little loop with some fabric tack. I'm finally caught up with my words, and this is what it looks like. And then I'm going to use this little piece right here. This is called a bow tie clip or something like that. It's actually used for sun catchers, for the crystal beads that make the sun catchers. All I'd done was, since the edge of the long, I don't even know what to call it, but the long end is flat, so I just bent the tip a little bit, and then I manipulated a piece of wire. So I glued that little clip into place, the little hook, and now I'm bringing the wire in and I'm going to slide it underneath that little hook, and then I'm going to glue it in place on the other side of the belt, so underneath the belt. Now I'm going to take my fabric tack and I'm just going to roll the belt up and just make it look like it was rolled up and fastened and laid on the shelf. And this shelf is going to have some of the belongings of the old man that passed away years ago. So we'll come back to see what this belt looks like on the shelf when I add it. So here are the brackets. They're metal, and I actually had two sets, so I made two of these shelves. Now for the final aging stage, I'm going to use my black chalk pastels, and I'm just bringing out some more of that detail. And this is what the table is looking like. I'm going to do the same thing on the shelf. It looks very handmade, I think, and very authentic. I absolutely love this tiny little table, and I love how the shelf comes out as well. This is what the shelf looks like. The shelf actually turns out to be one of my favorite pieces, so I had to make another one for my Etsy shop. But you can see how the black brings out some of the details where the gaps are. So now I'm going to make a few ties because I added a rod underneath that shelf as a tie rack. So I'm just sketching out a tie. This is a really thick piece of fabric, so I'm going to have to use my clover iron to help fuse the glue, but I'm using liquid stitch. I've sketched out a tie shape, and now I'm just going around it a little more and sketching the same shape. This will be for the seams. So I'm going to cut them out. The ties are super fun to make, tiny friends, and very easy. Now I'm going to use the liquid stitch to make the seams, and I've snipped the places where the tie kind of chain, the angles of the ties, I actually snipped them in the three places on the bottom. And this is what they all look like. Try to make them different styles, different shapes. You can even take two different fabric pieces and put them together to create one unique looking tie like this. And this is actually just two different ties, but you can lay them on top of each other and create one whole tie. And this is what the tie looks like. And then when you flip it over, this is what the back looks like. But this is definitely something, tiny friends, you can make for the man doll. If you have men dolls in your house, I absolutely adore how this piece came out. This is one of my favorite pieces, and it just feels really good to have something of the old man's in the house, which I will make more pieces for him as I go along. But this is so, so adorable. I love the way it just makes me feel. Um, so I have a couple more pieces that I am going to be putting on the shelf that you'll get to see in the end in the final viewing. But this is what it looks like. So adorable. Okay, so for this project, I know most people are familiar with this famous iconic painting called American Gothic. And the painter who painted this painting's name is Grant Wood. And what most people are not familiar with is the history of this painting, or why he painted it, or who the people are in the painting. So Grant Wood was from Iowa. I always want to say Ohio, but he was from Iowa, and he was driving through Iowa and drove through a small town and saw this small farmhouse that is sitting in the background. So that house really exists. Here, I'm going to put a picture in the corner of what the house really looks like. So it's a real house. It's not very big at all. It's just a flimsy framed farmhouse, very small. But he thought it was the most ridiculous thing to have that Gothic style window placed on such a flimsy framed farmhouse. And he just knew that that was something he wanted to paint. He thought it was the most ridiculous thing, which it kind of is. Like, how absurd, and who would add that Gothic style window, right? So he decided, he wanted to paint this house. And he picked two people to model in the picture that he thought would look like they lived in a house like this. So he chose his sister, which is the woman, and his dentist, which is the old man. And he just felt like they would actually look like people that would live in that house. Um, the picture in his mind, the people in his mind, is depicted as father and daughter, not husband and wife. And most people think that it's husband and wife, but it's actually father and daughter. So that was his vision when he painted this picture. And I absolutely wanted to have this in the house somewhere. It's one of my favorite pieces. It's very iconic. And I want it to look like it was painted on canvas. So I'm going to do a little bit of work to it to try and make it look like that. Um, I also have a printout of the real models, the real people that modeled for this picture. So I'm going to show you what they look like. Okay, so here's a picture of his sister and his dentist in real life. And I just thought that maybe, that's what the couple of the house would look like. Not of the painting, but of the real people. So, I mean, it kind of looks like that could be Margot in her younger years, and maybe that was her husband. So I'm going to make a little frame for this and stick them both into the sewing room. I love that I found an image of the real models in the painting. I thought that was super cool. So what I'm going to do is I have printed the picture on a piece of printing fabric that I found in a thrift store. It was a brand new pack. It had like 5 sheets in it, and it's um, printable cotton sheets. So it has like this piece of paper on the back that helps it go through the machine, and it almost looks like canvas. You can also create your own printable fabric. If you have wax paper, you can take a paper towel, you can take a napkin, and you can take some fabric and iron it onto the wax paper. It'll stick right on that wax paper and help go right through the machine, and then you can have a printout on a piece of fabric or on a napkin or a paper towel. So because I want it to look like it was painted on canvas, I'm going to have to do something very scary for me, and I'm going to have to coat it with Mod Podge. A lot of times Mod Podge will make my ink bleed, and I'm just using a inkjet printer, so it's a very scary thing because I only have one shot to do this. So I'm going to try and give it a couple coats of the Mod Podge. I know spraying it with hairspray, a couple coats of hairspray does help keep the ink from bleeding, but sometimes that doesn't always work. So I'm going to do what I can to see if I can get this to look like a real painting. Um, and then I'm going to add it to a frame, and I'll show you the frames that I chose. Okay, this is the frame that I chose for the canvas piece. This frame was given to me by Ava Bentley. I know that she makes these, they're 3D printed, and then she sells sets of them. So you can purchase a set of these frames from her website, and I will put a link in the description box below if you're interested in purchasing one of her set of frames. It comes with a variety of different frames. I'm not really sure how many frames come in the set, but you get a few different ones. I thought this one would work really well. It's not your average canvas style frame, and I like that it's oval. I also like that it fits on the print pretty well, and it's just pretty unique for this photo. So I think it's going to work out really well in the old farmhouse. And so I'm going to do some things to it and add it to the canvas. Okay, for the little picture, this is a frame that I made from chipboard, and I had cut this shape out a few different times from my Cricut machine, and then I layered the cuts together to thicken the frame. And then I add a printy on it, but I'm not going to use the printy. I'm actually going to paint this and add a little piece of wire to the back for a stand. And I thought this was perfect for the smaller picture of the couple. So I will be showing these in the end and what they look like in the final view of everything that I've made. Okay, so I purchased this phonograph off of Amazon for about $4. It's actually a pencil sharpener. It's die cast. I absolutely love this. I felt that Margot would be listening to her records and would need one of these in the sewing room. So I am going to make some adjustments to this because I need it to not look like a pencil sharpener. So I have to figure out how to cover up that hole. I really don't have any solid ideas. I'm just going to wing it and see what I have and see what's going to work. But you can crank the little handle and it turns the turntable, and the little needle moves back and forth. Um, yeah, so I don't know. Let's see what I can do with this. Originally, I was going to add some wood on the sides and maybe cover up that hole that way. And then I thought, that might be a little difficult because I have to cut around the other pieces, the handle and the back piece. So I just went through my stash. I have this copper paint if I need it. I can use this paint as well. I don't know if I'm going to need this yet. Um, but after looking, I found this. And this came from Crafter's Square from the Dollar Tree. It was made for the Cricut machines, and I have been dying to use this stuff for so long. I've had it in my stash. So I'm going to use it, add a little paint, and we'll see what it looks like when we come back. So now we're going to view everything that I made, all the accessories, and then I'll show all the photos from the sewing room. Okay, so going to the sewing machine, I added a few more pieces on the sewing machine. I added an empty bowl of popcorn, a couple pieces of popcorn on the table, and also a sewing pattern. And then in the sewing room, you'll see a piece of popcorn on the floor as well. But she has to have a snack too, right? I mean, I'm always snacking while I'm working. So I made a old box of sewing patterns, and there's about 5 patterns. This one actually has a couple extra because I was going to use a few that I had in my stash that I thought would be fun, but I was having issues scanning them in correctly and I didn't get a good printout. But these are some of the images that I printed off of the internet, and then I just took them into my Photoshop and created little pattern packages. And then I cut them out and just glued them together. The inside is a piece of felt so that they kind of look puffy and they look like they have a pattern in them. This was one from my stash. It was a cute little dolly craft for a carry case. And then I also have this one, and this is like a sewing for dummies, and it's actually for Barbie clothes. So I thought it was really fun to add those. And there was also one for dog clothes as well, but I couldn't get that one in. But this box is super old, and knowing Margot, she will use it until it falls apart. So here is the phonograph, and this is what it looks like. This is what it came out to look like. And I just added that faux leather around the sides, added a little bit of paint and aging, and then I added some paint to the piece itself. A little bit of gold and a little bit of silver. I added some gold trimming around the top piece, and then I left the rest that metallic antique copper, which I love so much. I also added a record. Um, I got this record off of this little Barbie record player, and I had 3 of these from when my daughter was a little girl, so the records worked out really well. I painted them and coated them. I cut this little piece off to put inside, or actually I glued it on top of the record to make it look like um, it was actually sitting on that. I did have to coat it in Mod Podge. I don't know how well it's going to hold up. A lot of times that Mod Podge will get really sticky, but I'll just hope for the best. But I couldn't stop there. I made a few more accessories for this. I made some record albums and covers. This is one of the other records. I added little labels. They're little Columbia labels. And this is what they look like. So I have 3 records. The one is actually glued to the phonograph, and then the other 2 just sit inside some of the album covers. So this one is the Charleston. Now I printed these on matte photo paper, so they're pretty thick. Matte photo paper is almost like cardstock, so they kind of feel like real album covers. This is Louis Armstrong, Bessie Smith. This is what the back looks like. Show tunes from the 20s. And then, of course, the Andrews Sisters, which is Margot's absolute favorite. Have you guys listened to the Andrews Sisters? They are so fun, and their songs are just so catchy. They stick in your head. You're singing them all day, but they're super fun songs. And then, of course, I had to throw this classic, The Great Gatsby. I love The Great Gatsby. I love the movie. I love the story. And then I made a little rustic bench for this to sit on. And I also made a rustic wooden crate to hold the albums that you'll see in the pictures. So this is what I meant by one idea spawning other ideas. This is that little resin basket that I purchased off of Temu. I didn't do anything to the basket, but I filled it up with tons of sewing goodies. There's different buttons and spools of trimming and different spools of threads. And this was super fun to make. I just crammed packed as much as I could in there. So Margot has a complete sewing basket with all the necessities for her to make some nice garments. There's some pretty nice buttons in there. I love this little basket. I was trying to see how much I could fit in there. Okay, and this is the painting. It actually did come out looking like it was painted on canvas, so I lucked out on that. I did not add a glass piece. I left it open so that you can look and feel and tell that it's a canvas piece. I added some nail art to the plates, and then I also added GW for Grant Wood. And this piece came out pretty cool. I was so scared. I was so scared, but it worked out. And it really does look like a painting. And then this is the little frame that I made for the couple. You can see it has a glass piece in it. It's not real glass. It's just like a plexiglass kind of. And then I added the wire on the back so it can stand up. Okay, this is what the Temu sewing box looks like. I added a little watch winding knob for the knob, and it's kind of dented, so that's good. It's a super old box. It used to be Margot's mother's, and of course a box this old would have a broken chain. So I added the chains. There's a broken chain. I added a little hook for a handle and some nail decor and some little metal pieces, and then the paper hinges on the back. So that's what this box looks like. Okay, so I made Margot a calendar. I really feel like she would need one to keep track of the days. I know I completely lose track of the days when I'm working a lot, and I really don't know what day it is, and it happens a lot. This is a 1936 calendar from October, and this is actually the real October calendar from 1936. It's my favorite month, my favorite time of year. We're coming up on that time of year, and I thought it would be a perfect time to incorporate this into the sewing room. And it has a little witch on her broom with a cat from the 30s. This is that piece that I made, the old man's shelf. Well, that he technically made. I technically made, but he made. And I'm going to add a couple pieces to it. I have a little die-cast car, like a hot rod car that I found in my stash that is going to be placed on it. You'll see that in the pictures after I show you all this. You'll get to see what the sewing room looks like. But I adore this piece. I really adore this piece so much. I have to say this is one of my favorite pieces, but I probably said that before. I also made a signature book, and this one says the Tiny Keyhole. It's got my logo on it. It's got my name on it. On the side it says the tiny things in life, and on the back it says a book for miniature lovers. It's got my logo and it's got the year 2023. I aged it up a little bit, but you'll be seeing these little books in any of the miniature scenes that I make from now on because I just feel like it's a perfect way to add a signature piece. So it's a little book. Okay, I tried to keep this one in the video, so I may actually do a separate video for this. This is a little paper bag for Margot's garbage, and I need a garbage. I'm sure most of you have a garbage next to you when you're crafting or working, and she needed one too. So it's filled with scrap cuts and pieces and tissues that she would use. Here's the plant that I made and a little bit of a better look now that you can see it nice and close and it's pretty crisp and clear. There's the fabric on it, the little patchwork. This really does look like the pot that I have, and I did try to find the pot so that I can show you the two together, but I think it's somewhere out in the garage or in the backyard. I couldn't find it. You probably hear me say that a lot. I can't find this, I can't find that, but it's true. So this is the plant. Here's a better look of the fan, all completed. And this also is another one of my favorite pieces. I absolutely love how this turned out. Gosh, it looks so realistic. It's just this awesome little replica of what a old fan would look like. Here's the plug without any prongs because it's definitely getting plugged in, kind of like what I did with the radio. So this is what the fan looks like. So if you have one of these, I hope you're inspired to redo yours as well. Here's the little table for the fan. This little piece is so stinking cute. It's completely, literally, no pun intended, handmade. Um, this little table that her husband made for her. I love creating pieces that her husband has made or pieces that look handmade because they don't have to be perfect, and it's a great way to use your scrap pieces. It really is a great way to make something look handmade. Okay, here's a little wall mirror that I made with a frame. I made this frame a really long time ago and then just decided it would be really good for a mirror. So this is just a piece of paper that will come off. I'll stick it to some brown craft paper and then I'll be able to hang it on the wall. Okay, I also redid the pillow that was on Margot's chair. I wasn't really happy with that pillow, and now that I found my seed beads, I was able to recreate a better pillow. This one's a lot bigger and it's a lot flatter. It's not so bulky. It doesn't look like a little jelly bean. So that's what that looks like. Of course, I could not forget all the fabrics because it really wouldn't be a sewing room without the fabrics, right? So this was actually the very last thing that I did. It was super relaxing after all of that work, and it was a great way to come down from all of that. It was super simple. I just folded up some pieces. I put these pieces around a piece of chipboard or really thin cardboard. Some of them look like she had used it and then just raveled it back up, and then some of them are unused, so they're a little neater and cleaner, but I didn't want them all to look that way. So here are some of the newer, well, this one she actually used before, but here are some of the newer fabrics, and some of these fabrics came from a really special tiny friend who may recognize them. Okay, so for my last two pieces, I chose these two pictures out of my stash. I've showed them before in previous videos. This is a photo of a German soldier boy. I think he was about 14. He was actually rescued by the U.S. and this was a World War II photo. But this boy is a spitting image of my son from the way he's holding that cup, his posture, everything about him. And I just truly believe this is my son in another life. So he is definitely going in the house as a relative. I don't know, but he's going in the house for sure. Okay, this last photo, I took this picture of my family while I was working at one of those old-time photo booths. I had them all come in and I dressed them all up, gave them all props, and we did a complete photo session all day long. It was super fun, but they look like a bunch of hillbilly relatives of Margot's, so they're going to go into the sewing room as well. Okay, tiny friends, that is it. That is all of the things that I have made. I know this video was a little long. I hope you all enjoyed it. I hope it was fun. I want to thank you all for watching. Thank you all for subscribing. And don't forget to let me know what you thought in the comments below. Hit that like button, give it a thumbs up, and subscribe if you haven't subscribed and you want to see more. It really helps my channel and I really appreciate it. So I'm going to show you all the pictures from the sewing room so you can get a better view at what everything looks like. And until next time, tiny friends, I hope you all have a lovely day, and I will see you all on the mini side. Bye-bye.